Thanks for joining me. I wanted to show you how I've taught students to do um, simplifying fractions in class. So this is kind of the first part that gets our fraction chapter started. So let's start off pretty simple. Let's start off with 2/6. Okay, so you and I both know that these are even numbers and that when we are solving problems with fractions, that simplifying is an easier way to understand it. For example, if we were sharing, I don't know, a piece, let's say a pizza, and I said, well, you can have 2/6 of it. You might say, well, how much is that? Because when you don't speak in lowest terms, it's harder to understand. So that's kind of the reasoning behind why we simplify. So when we are simplifying, we're trying to find factors that both of these numbers have in common, because whatever I do to the top, I must do to the bottom. Okay, so some students, when we first start out, need to list the factors first, and that's completely fine. You can make a colon and then list them out this way, or you can even draw what we call a factor tree and sort of draw out what times what equals that number. So 2 only has 2 factors, one in itself. Okay, and then 6 has a few more. So 6 has 1 and itself, but then it also has 2 and 3 times each other equals 6. If you're doing the factor tree, okay, you can always start off with 1 and 6, and then 6 can be split into 2 and 3. So that shows you that 1, 2, 3, and 6 are all factors. Either way you show it is fine. Your child might not need to show it. They might already know what the factors of 2 and 6 are and can find the one they have in common. Okay? So once you've found what they have in common, you want to find the greatest common factor, the biggest number that they share. If you do a smaller one, it's fine. You just have more steps. So the greatest one they have in common is 2. They both have a 2 that they share. So that means we're going to divide each number by 2. And in the beginning, I have students mark this just to show their work. Eventually, they won't have to, but just to get them used to the process. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, and 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. If your child has a hard time with that division, ask them the reverse, which would be 2 times what gives you 6, or 2 times what gives you 2, and that will give you the answer. So that shows you 1/3, okay? Let's go a little bit bigger. So let's say that you have, how about 8/10? Okay. Actually, sorry, just kidding. Let's do something a little bit bigger, just so I can show you what I was talking about from earlier. Let's do 20/30ths. Okay. Now we talked about before how you can do the greatest common factor, but if you go smaller, that's fine. You'll just have more steps. So let's do one where we don't choose the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor that 20 and 30 share would be 10, but let's say your child didn't know that, and that's okay. So let's say they know that both of these share, let's say a 5, okay? So they decide to divide by 5, because whatever they do to the top, they have to do to the bottom. Okay, so 20 divided by 5 gives me 4, or 5 times what gives me 20? 4. 30 divided by 5 gives me 6, or what times 5 gives you 30? 6. Now I have 4/6. Now, when you don't choose the greatest common factor, this is what I'm talking about, you're not done. You're going to get a fraction that can be simplified again. Another good way to show a fraction can be simplified is if both of the numbers are even, because that means that they have at least a 2 in common. So that's one sign to look out for. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. And 4 divided by 2 gives you 2, and 6 divided by 2 gives you 3. Now I know I'm done because 2 is a prime number and 3 is a prime number. There's nothing else that these two share that could make them any lower, so 2/3 would be the lowest. So this is kind of an example of if you don't use that greatest common factor, it's okay. You just have more steps, and students just need to make sure that they can still identify that if they get a fraction like this, that they need to ask themselves, can I simplify again, or am I really in lowest terms? Okay. Obviously, finding the greatest common one makes it the easiest, but those are 2 different ways that students will be simplifying fractions in class. Hope this was helpful.